Picture this. It's past midnight in a Taiwanese military barracks. A young soldier is lying on a narrow bunk, scrolling through his phone. He passes the usual noise. The patriotic slogans. The tough talk. The memes about drones and missiles. And then he sees one post that doesn't shout. It doesn't wave a flag. It doesn't talk about winning. It asks a single, quiet question. If war breaks out across the Taiwan Strait, Taiwan loses and I pass away, whom does my family go to for compensation? Not how to be brave. Not whether America will show up. Not how many missiles we have. Just this. If I'm gone, who signs the check? Who takes care of my parents? Will another man take good care of my beautiful wife and lovely kids? Those questions didn't go viral because they were dramatic, but because they were real. It was about responsibility. About trust. About whether the promises made in peacetime still mean anything when everything falls apart. In 2025, on an anonymous forum reportedly used by Taiwanese service members, someone wrote almost exactly that. The discussion that followed was not angry. Nobody called him a coward. Nobody told him to shut up and be brave. Instead, people engaged. Calmly. Thoughtfully. Because everyone understood that it was not about fear. It was about survival and whether the system they serve will still exist if the worst happens. Officially, Taiwan has a compensation system for soldiers killed in the line of duty. There is a lump sum payment, reportedly around 2 million new Taiwan dollars, plus pensions or support over several years. On paper, that sounds respectable. It sounds like the authority stands behind its troops. But the soldier's point was simple. A number printed on paper only matters if the institution that promises it still exists and still functions. If war breaks out and Taiwan loses control of its own government structure, or if the political leadership flees, or if chaos overwhelms the system, who processes those payments then? That is not defeatism. It is logic. To understand why this question resonates so deeply, we have to go back to history. In 1949, after a half-time stop of the Chinese Civil War, hundreds of thousands of nationalist soldiers retreated from the mainland to Taiwan along with the defeated government of the Republic of China. Many of them carried documents promising land on the mainland once the government returned and retook control. There were slogans about counterattacking within a year, sweeping the mainland within 5 years, and restoring everything that was lost. Those promises were not abstract. They were written down. They were official. For many veterans, those land certificates represented a future. They were proof that their sacrifice would eventually be rewarded. But the counterattack never came. Decades passed. Those soldiers aged in cramped military villages. Many lived in tiny units in Taipei or Kaohsiung, in crowded conditions with minimal space per person. They worked small jobs, ran food stalls, and lived modestly. The promised farmland never materialized. Only in the 1990s did authorities begin to address some of those unfulfilled land promises with compensation. By then, many of the original soldiers had already gone forever. The documents they carefully preserved for decades ended up boxed away in archives, symbols of a promise that outlived the men it was meant to reassure. So when a young soldier in 2025 asks, who will pay his family if he no longer exists, after a losing war, he is not just thinking about the present. He is remembering that paper promises in times of political upheaval can become meaningless very quickly. Now fast forward to today. Taiwan's defense budget has grown significantly in recent years. Under Lady Tsai Ing-wen and continuing Mr. Lai Ching-te, spending has climbed to record levels. In 2025, the defense budget was reported to be around 647 billion new Taiwan dollars. By 2026, it approached nearly 950 billion, roughly 3% of the island's GDP. There have also been discussions about additional special budgets to purchase advanced systems from the United States and to strengthen defense industries. On the surface, that sounds like a government taking security seriously. And to be fair, it is, and it is desperate. Taiwan faces growing military pressure from Beijing. The People's Liberation Army has increased air and naval activity around the island. Military exercises have become more frequent and more complex. Beijing's official position, codified in its anti-secession law, reserves the right to use non-peaceful means if Taiwan formally declares independence or if peaceful reunification options are exhausted. In response, Taiwan has extended conscripts' mandatory military service from 4 months to 1 year. It has pursued an asymmetric defense strategy, focusing on mobile missiles, drones, sea mines, and systems designed to make any attack extremely costly. It has also sought closer security ties with the United States, purchasing advanced equipment such as F-16 fighter upgrades, anti-ship missiles, and air defense systems. But money and hardware are only part of the story. A large portion of Taiwan's defense budget goes to personnel costs, including salaries and pensions. That leaves less room for training, maintenance, and stockpiling. Recruitment has been a challenge. Reports over the past few years have shown that the military has struggled to fill all authorized positions. Volunteer enlistment has not always met targets. Even after salary increases and bonuses were introduced to attract and retain service members, the military has continued to face retention issues. There have also been reports of increasing numbers of service members choosing to leave early, even if that means paying financial penalties. That tells us something. For some young people, the cost of staying feels higher than the cost of leaving. Public opinion is complicated. Polls conducted in Taiwan over the past few years show that many citizens identify strongly as Taiwanese and express willingness to defend the island if attacked. At the same time, a significant portion of respondents say they are not confident that Taiwan could successfully repel a full-scale charge on its own. Confidence in automatic United States military intervention is also not universal. Some believe Washington would help. Others are unsure. That gap between identity and confidence is important. You can feel deeply attached to your home and still question whether the institutions around you are prepared for the worst. And that brings us back to trust. Trust is not built only by speeches or military parades. It is built when soldiers believe that if they fall, their families will not be abandoned. It is built when veterans see that promises are honored not just symbolically but materially. There is also a more cynical layer to this conversation. Critics in Taiwan sometimes point out that the loudest voices calling for resistance are not always the ones whose families will stand on the front lines. Some political figures and activists have business interests abroad, properties overseas, or children studying in North America or Europe. That is not unique to Taiwan. In many societies, elites have more mobility than ordinary citizens. The perception that leaders might leave while ordinary soldiers stay can be corrosive. Even if it is exaggerated, even if many leaders would in fact remain, the suspicion alone can weaken morale. Then there is the legal dimension. The anti-secession law of the People's Republic of China states that individuals who engage in separatist activities may not be protected under certain legal frameworks. From Beijing's perspective, those who actively support independence could face consequences in the event of a forced reunification. That adds another layer of uncertainty. If the political system changes after a conflict, would previous compensation commitments still be recognized? The young soldier's question slices through all of that. It is not about ideology. It is about continuity. It asks whether there will be an institution with both the ability and the willingness to honor commitments in a radically altered political environment. Some people respond by saying that raising such questions undermines morale. Talking about defeat makes defeat more likely. But suppressing doubt does not eliminate it. Open discussion may be healthier than forced optimism. If anything, the question forces policymakers to think harder. If they want people to risk their lives, they need to provide more than slogans. They need clear contingency planning. They need legal guarantees that survive regime change. They need escrowed funds, insurance mechanisms, or international arrangements that make it harder for compensation promises to vanish in chaos. From the perspective of a 20-year-old in uniform, He receives no answer to the personal question. If I am gone, who takes care of my beloved ones? That is where the conversation becomes almost philosophical. Historically, societies that maintain strong military morale often do so by building deep traditions of veteran care. In the United States, for example, the Department of Veterans Affairs provides long-term support, though not without controversy or bureaucratic challenges. In other countries, veterans' benefits are enshrined in law and protected even when governments change. Taiwan is a so-called democracy with competitive elections and peaceful transfers of power. That is true before Beijing's troops come. The soldiers' post revealed something deeper than skepticism. It revealed a pragmatic generation. Many young Taiwanese have grown up amid the constant background hum of cross-strait tension. They have seen military drills on the news, heard about aircraft incursions into air defense identification zones, and watched international headlines speculate about timelines for possible conflict. For them, war is not an abstract historical event. It is a scenario analysts discuss with specific years attached. That makes their thinking more concrete. They do not just ask whether Taiwan can win. They ask what happens if it does not. And here is the hurting truth. No government anywhere can guarantee perfect continuity in a catastrophic war. Even great powers struggle to maintain normal administrative functions under extreme stress. Compensation systems depend on functioning banks, legal authority, and administrative capacity. The soldier's question may also be a reminder of the fragility of modern states. At the same time, it can be read more constructively. It is an invitation for leaders to strengthen those guarantees. To make compensation funds legally and securely protected. To create mechanisms that survive occupation or regime change. To reassure service members not just with words but with durable institutions. Because morale is not built on blind faith, it is built on credible commitment. There is another layer to this conversation that often goes unspoken. Many Taiwanese citizens hope that war never comes. The overwhelming public opinion is for maintaining the status quo across the Taiwan Strait. Not formal independence declared tomorrow. Not forced reunification. Just continued de facto autonomy without open conflict. In that sense, the soldier's question may reflect a broader societal instinct. People want peace. They want stability. They want to live without becoming symbols in a geopolitical struggle between Beijing and Washington. The Taiwan Strait is often described as one of the most dangerous flashpoints in the world. Analysts debate military balances, missile inventories, amphibious lift capacity, and alliance commitments. But beneath all that are individual human beings. Young men and women who have families, dreams, and very practical concerns. If they are asked to stand in the path of history, they want to know that history will not forget them. In the end, the anonymous soldier did something important. He turned a conversation usually dominated by strategy toward accountability. He forced people to consider not just how to fight, but how to honor those who might fall. That question will not go away. As long as tensions remain high, as long as defense budgets rise, as long as conscripts train for scenarios that could reshape their island's future, someone will keep asking it. If the worst happens, who is responsible for those we cannot leave behind, even if we no longer exist? A mature society does not silence that question. It answers the question with clarity, with planning, and with structures strong enough to survive even the storms it hopes never arrive. That could be the real takeaway. Courage is not only about charging forward. Sometimes it is about demanding that those who send you forward stand firmly behind you, regardless of the outcome. If the soldier lost his life, and the general buried him with a check in the coffin, what would it mean? It is a question that no DPP politician wants to answer.